The game of the week in the APFL did not disappoint. We have a new leader in the power rankings in the WRL, and we have some more website updates for you. All of this and more in 20 seconds. Hey fellow fanatics, welcome to the Fanatically Real broadcast, sponsored by Sport Management Solutions, your one-stop shop for all your athletic communication needs. How is everybody on this Thursday night? If you're out there, give us a shout. You know, it's going to take a little bit for you to show up on our screen, but we will make sure that we get you up on the windows so everybody can see you. So week 11 wrap up, man. We had a bunch of really good games this week in both the APFL and in the WRL. Here's our agenda for the night. We're going to start off with the APFL, of course. We're going to go through everything in the WRL, Loch Ness all the way down to Krakens. Got some new website updates for you that I want to share with you as well. Go over the standings of the FSA Sunday ticket and what it looks like for week 12. Not starting tonight because we got Thursday night football tonight. Of course, we only do the FSA Sunday ticket on Sundays. And then we'll talk about what the next broadcast is going to look like because we're going to shift days slightly. Bob out there with us. Bob, how are you? Good to see you on. Let's see who else is out there. I've got somebody else, a name that I've never seen before. Of course, I do the same thing that I do when I'm not supposed to be. I'm looking at the chat that pops up for YouTube, and then I'm looking for it on my screen, and there's a delay, and it'll get there in a second, and then everybody will get to see it on the screen. So I got a boo from Regal 1. I got a hi, Brian. How is everybody tonight? All right, let's get to this APFL. So game of the week was between the Green Bay Cheeseheads and the Detroit Pride. Let's get that game up on the screen. Green Bay wins by 2.88 points, and it kind of changes everything on the NFC side of the playoff bracket, which we'll go over here shortly. Oh, it's Jenna that's out there. Hey, Jenna. I guess I didn't know what Regal 1 was. It's good to see you out there. Hi. So the Cheeseheads end up winning this game 110.56 to 107.68. And then again, it caused a seismic shift over on the NFC playoff side of the playoff bracket, and we'll go over that here shortly. But with this win, Green Bay ended up reclaiming the NFC North. They did jump from the 5th seed to the 2nd seed. Detroit went from 1st to 5th. And then, again, we'll have more of it here in just a second whenever we bring that up. And then on the AFC side, I wanted to bring up this pretty awesome stat. So in the 4 years that we've been playing in this league now, Miami has played New England in the regular season 8 times. Miami has got a perfect record against New England. They are 8-0. Final score there was 128-54. So let's show this playoff picture that we were just talking about, and maybe we can explain a little bit more of what is happening there right now. So as we said, Green Bay ends up winning their game, and they shift back up. However, they only end up making it to number 2 because the New York Mammoths are now sitting at number 1, but the loss by Detroit ends up putting them in 5th. Ends up being a win by New Orleans or a loss by Atlanta, and New Orleans ends up reclaiming the NFC South. They are 6-5 right now, and then so New Orleans ended up beating Carolina, or no, I'm sorry, Carolina ended up upsetting Atlanta 97-66, which is what put the New Orleans Angels back in the top of the NFC South at 6-5. I apologize. And everybody else has shifted around a little bit, but you're seeing all of the same regular teams in there. Arizona ends up losing, and they fall out. Seattle moves out of the 7th spot and into the 3 spot, and San Francisco ends up taking over the 7th spot. On the AFC side, no real seismic shifts over there. Probably, I think the only thing that really changed is the Vegas Marauders ended up moving into the 7th spot, taking over where the New York Wings were at last week. So going into week 12, which we start tonight, on the NFL side of the house, we are back in to cross-conference play in the APFL. This will be the 4th and final time this season that this happens. This will complete our 4-year-long rotation where everybody in the AFC division faces each one of the NFC divisions. Right now, my fantasy league, MFL, has the game of the week set at Denver versus Washington. Of course, Denver was last year's AFC and APFL champion. And right now, Washington is an NFC wildcard contender. They are fighting for a playoff position. I'm sorry if I feel a little off. I feel bad that I didn't realize that was Jenna out there. Now my brain is all kind of wacko. I'm sorry, Jenna. I don't know what it is. I don't know if I remember seeing you being on there as Regal 1 before. And now as soon as you said that, I could see your little icon, even though it's small as heck, and I can tell that's you. All right, let's get into this WRL. We're going to bring up Loch Ness first, because that's what's always on our agenda, but that's not the game we're going to talk about. The game that we want to talk about, comes out of the Cerberus region, where we had the biggest upset of the week. The Maniacs were finally dethroned. He ends up losing to Groot. Final score there was 192 to 157, a 35-point victory. There was no other Cerberus game that was really close to matching the magnitude of this one. So when we get down to the Cerberus down at the bottom, we don't really have any highlights there. But the big game that is actually out of the Loch Ness region, with the Maniacs falling, the Ohio River Monsters made sure that there was no doubt that they're going to move up to the number 1 spot in the power rankings, which we'll talk about that here shortly, as they end up beating the E-Thugs 189 to 107. And again, we will get down to the power rankings here shortly, and you can see the shift in those. Yeah, the screens are off. You have to tell me what you mean. I wonder if it's a little bit delayed. She said disregard. Never mind. Thanks, Jenna. All right, so there's where we're at with the Loch Ness. It must have been because I was talking about the Cerberus, and then I started bringing up Loch Ness stuff. Could be what it was. But yeah, we had to get that game, the big game in the Cerberus region, to lead this off, because that's huge to have the Maniacs lose. And then we had to go up and get the actual game of the week out of the Loch Ness region. So over in the Red Dragons region, for the 2nd straight week in a row, the Unicorn Legends own the Red Dragons region. They posted the region's highest point total and one of the league's highest totals for the whole week. I think they finished 2nd or 3rd this week. Final score there over the Crayon Crusaders was 194 to 171. And then again, like we said, no real thing to mention in the Cerberus region outside of what we already talked about. What we already talked about with the Maniacs taking the loss to Groot. I feel like my camera's too high tonight or something like that. I don't know what's going on. Let me see if I can shift this thing down just a tiny bit. Sorry to everybody while we're doing technical things here. Should have already been set up. So hopefully that looks a little bit better. I feel like I was super short on the screen for some reason. All right, so we already knocked out the Loch Ness, the Red Dragons. We already talked about the Cerberus. We led with that. That was the big victory of the week. I'm totally off tonight. You guys got me all screwed up. Let's talk about the Kraken's region. So the Kraken's region delivered both the closest game of the week and the highest score in all of the WRL this week. So the first game that we want to talk about is the Lunatics edging out the Louisville Sluggers. Shows 122 to 122 on the screen. Final score was actually 122.94 to 122.56. Lunatics winning by 0.38 points. And again, this was the closest game in the WRL this week. And then As we said, we had the highest score of the week out of the Kraken's region, and that belongs to the Virginia Blackbeards. They put up 207 points, the only team to go over the 200-point mark this week. They end up beating the Garbage Points 207 to 153. This win ended up putting the Virginia Blackbeards up in the top 5. Again, we're going to talk about that in just a second as we get ready to go over the WRL power rankings. The other thing that this did for the Virginia Blackbeards, I'll pull my face back up for a second. The other thing that this did for the Virginia Blackbeards is, as you all know, we are playing tiered playoffs this year. We have 3 tiers: Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3. We're taking 12 teams from each one of those tiers to the playoffs. The Virginia Blackbeards is now the only team that is guaranteed out of the 48 teams to be one of the 12 that's going into the Tier 1 playoffs. He knows this already. There's nobody that can come from behind and beat him. So congratulations to Virginia Blackbeards. They are already a lock for the playoff spot. So let's get these power rankings up here and kind of talk about them a little bit more. So again, we said that the Maniacs lose, which drops them to the number 2 spot. But the Ohio River Monsters' massive win paired with the Maniacs' loss ends up putting the Ohio River Monsters into the top spot. Maniacs fall to number 2. Unicorn Legends hold steady at number 3, even though their power ranking did go up just a tiny bit. It was 0.004 points. And then the Monarchs are still sitting 4th, but their power rankings dropped slightly. They dropped by 0.009 points. Again, we just mentioned the Virginia Blackbeards moving up into the top 5 for the first time this year. They are also solidified one of those spots in the Tier 1 playoffs. They jumped up from number 8 to number 5. Music City Miracles, even though their power ranking number itself went up, they still dropped 1 spot from number 5 to number 6. Ted Lasso's also dropped 1 spot. He went from number 6 to number 7. Lunatics, with that really, really close game, end up moving up from number 9 to the number 8 spot. The Terrifiers are finally in the single digits for the first time this season. They have moved up from number 11 to number 9. And then the Chaos dropped from number 7 to number 10. But this is a pretty familiar landing spot for them, as they have seen themselves in the number 10 spot quite a bit this year. In fact, I want to say we're in week 11. He's had to have been there at least 4 or 5 times in that spot. So pretty interesting. All right, so week 12 in the WRL. Huge week for week 12. This is our double header week. Remember, at the beginning of the season, we rolled that little wheel, figured out which week was going to be the double header week. That falls on this week, so that means every WRL team is playing 2 teams at the same time with the same lineup. One of those games is in division, one of those games is out of division. That means teams could come out of this week improved by 2-0. They could go 1-1, or they could fall to 0-2 if this week, and there's a lot of playoff implications that can come out of this week. So good luck to everybody. And our first doubleheader that we've had in a really long time. Years ago, we did a doubleheader the first week of the season, and I think maybe a year or so after that, we did a doubleheader the last week of the season. But it's been quite a while, so good luck to everybody in this doubleheader week. All right, so we are in week 12, so let's talk about some NFL primetime games. Of course, Thursday Night Football is going to get started here in about 35 minutes. We've got Buffalo at Houston. Buffalo favored by 5.5. I've had the hat on all night. You already know who I'm picking. Sunday Night Football, we got Tampa Bay at the Rams. Rams are favored by 6.5. Monday Night Football, we got Carolina at San Francisco. San Francisco favored by 7. We do not have any international games this week. We do have 4 teams on bye. They are Denver, LA Chargers, Miami, and Washington. So next thing I want to do is go over the website updates with you all. I picked out some really good stuff that I worked on this week that I wanted to share with you all. Let me get that up on the screen for you. Make sure I'm clicking on the right thing here. This should be it right here. There we go. All right, I'm already logged in because of what I wanted to show you all is under my dashboard. So already logged in. I'm going to click on my dashboard. You're going to see one of the newest features right away. Hopefully it doesn't make me log back in again. I kind of want to prompt it first before I click on it. So this idea was given to me by the NFC director, Toby Keller, while I was in the hospital this last time. He had wrote me and said, hey, I'm tired of seeing all of the ads and stuff pop up on MFL Platinum, which is the third-party app that we all kind of use that play on MFL. And he says, so I'm not going to use it anymore, but one of the things that I'm going to miss is where all of my combined MFL leagues show their scores in one spot. And at first, I didn't realize that we were talking about MFL Platinum until he told me that's what it was on. And then I had to have him walk me through what he was talking about, because we've literally been on this app for years now. And I never knew there was a one spot on the app where you could see all of your scores, almost like in a little tiny box score for your MFL teams. I literally just thought the thing that you could click on was a header. So when I got in there, the idea started brewing. How could we do that for FSA? So when you click on my dashboard and you come in here, it's going to take a little bit, but you see where it says loading scores there? So what it's doing, it's going out and it's finding all of the games for this week. And since we've already rolled over to Thursday, it's already showing zeros across the board. The one game or the one league that you do see a score for is this was the final game that I played in the APBL for the year. I went out in week 23 to MJ and the LA Angels. So this pulls from our own database, which is why it shows up right away. This has to go out and do all kinds of API calls to MFL to make this work and stuff like that. But the cool part about it is you come in here at any time and it is updating live for you. So I think our delay is about 40 seconds from MFL's delay of about 40 seconds. So we're about 80 seconds behind actual game time, but this is still updating for you in quote unquote real time. And even better part is, and we'll just go to the APFL, when you click on this box score, it is going to take you to the live scoring page that will have all of the box scores for that league, and then we'll have your game highlighted immediately, and then you can come down here and see all of the points that are here for your players. On top of that, the other thing that we got fully functioning this week was this game data that's right here. So before the game starts, it tells you who they're playing, what day that they're playing, and what time they're playing. And if it's versus, it's at home. And if it's at, of course, it's away. And this updates live as well. Again, we're probably about 80 seconds away from game time, but that's a 40-second delay from MFL and a 40-second delay to our website as well. So that will update as the game is going on. So, and then when the game is over, it will actually show final on there as well. One of the things that we have found out, though, as fate would have it, when we finally got this working last week, was we had an overtime game. I honestly don't remember who went into overtime. Was it Jacksonville? No, I think Jacksonville blew out somebody. There was an overtime game. What happened was this showed final, and then it popped back up with 10 minutes on the clock as they do in NFL overtime, but it showed the fourth quarter instead of OT. So we're still trying to figure out a way to make that correct, but we know that there's very rarely is there any overtime in the NFL anyways. So for now, if you see it go final, you see a clock reset to 10 minutes and it says fourth quarter, you know you're in an overtime game. Let's see, what else did we do over this past week? Okay, so you got game data here, which is on live scoring. We also added game data on your fantasy preview. So if you go under scores and you click on fantasy previews, and we'll just use my game against Carolina Power Claws this weekend. You click on preview, and it'll bring up the game previews. A couple cool things that you're going to see here. Not as cool as if we had played the Power Claws before. But what it does show is the predicted score between you and the team that you're playing against. If we had had any games against each other, it would show our lifetime record against each other here. And then you could click on View Complete History, and a modal will pop up, and it will give you the breakdown of the game by game. Here are the projected scores for each one of your players. And as you can see, we have the game data on here as well. So as you're looking at this, you can see when all of your guys play during the week. Another thing that we added, you don't see it right now. If you clicked on player stats, nothing would pop up. However, if you knew the direct link to player stats, you would actually see that we are calculating something for player stats. We did that more because we wanted the data and we wanted to be able to do it on a standalone page before we ended up adding it to something. But if you go on to submit lineup now, and it pops up, and of course all of this is doing API calls over to MFL and then coming back. That's why it takes a while for some of this to come up. But not only are you getting your game data, which we did have working and we presented it last week, you are now getting year-to-date points for each one of your players. And it's on there for your starters and for your bench players. And that's why we ended up working with the player stats, was to get that as an additional piece of information on your submit lineup page. Also, we kind of changed the injury designations on here. The IR and the IR returns and the outs and the doubtfuls were all working great. They all had like these 1 or 2 letter codes. Questionable was the only one that was writing the entire word out for whatever reason. We got that changed, so it only shows a Q on questionable now. So some of the things that we still want to work on, we still want to get everything that's under transactions, and then just some of the aesthetics of what it looks like, not only on a desktop, but what it looks like in the mobile version of it as well, for those that are only going to use the mobile version of the website. So a few things to work on, but considering we started this in February and the goal was to make sure that we have this ready to go by next football season, I think that we will have zero issues of being able to make it by next football season. We still have 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, and 17. We still have 7 weeks left of this season, all the off season. Get us ready for next year. I think we will have zero problems having us ready for everybody to use. This, get us off of my fantasy league, and then this will be where everybody goes to run your FSA teams now. All right, FSA Sunday Ticket, because I know that's what you all care about. FSA Sunday Ticket after week 11. Here is the current standings, your top 10. We have 12 games this week. As I said earlier, there are no international games this week, so you do not have to get your lineup in until 1 p.m. East Coast time on Sunday. We do have the Thursday night game tonight. We have the Monday night game. We have the 12 Sunday games. And again, we have the 4 teams that are off this week for buys. Let's see. Before we talk about the next broadcast, I wanted to bring this up. And thank you to Tiffany for getting me her information just before we came live. I reached out to everybody in the defunct Dynasty leagues, the defunct Dynasty Federation, to get everybody's first name, last initial, so we can do the wheel of Dynasty selection that we're going to do. We are going to do that on Sunday. We're going to try to do it at 1 p.m. East Coast time, right at kickoff. What that's going to look like is going to look a lot like the WRL wheel was that we did before this season started. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put all 24 general managers' names on a wheel. We're going to spin that wheel, and then we're going to order these general managers for the first name off the list to go into the number 1 spot, all the way to the last name off the list to go into the 24th spot. And this will serve as our team selection, league selection, draft order. So once we have that order, we're going to give the general managers 24 hours to select which league of the XFL or arena they want to be a part of and which defunct team from that league they want to use as well. That way, it gives an idea of who they're going to play against, especially for those guys who know each other and have been playing in FSA for a while, and then it allows them in order to pick whatever team that they want as well. And if there's somebody out there that might swipe their team, make sure that they have a second or a third backup, like 1, 2, or 3 teams for each one of the leagues. But they will have 24 hours to make their selection. Gives them plenty of time to do research. We won't even do an overnight pause. Whenever somebody makes that selection, we'll just restart the clock for 24 hours, and we'll just keep on rolling. Give us plenty of time to be able to get that done, and then we can start working on the next part, which will be the aesthetics and the layouts of every single one of these teams and branding them, and then we can start working on the bylaws and the rules and the scoring system and what the rosters are going to look like, the starting lineups are going to look like, and all of those things. So I want to get the teams and the leagues created first. Everybody gets to learn who their league mates are, and then we will start working on the really nitty-gritty stuff to get us ready for the D2F in 2026. It'll be two 12-team leagues. They will be dynasty leagues, but they will have a playoff system at the end of the year, very similar to what the WRL does, where the two 12-team leagues will come together in a playoff format at the end to kind of crown a supreme person. It's almost like what we've got in the APFL right now, except for instead of two 16s, we're going to have two 12s. And with the defunct Dynasty Federation, we will be able to bring in up to 8 of these types of leagues for a total of 96 teams to be able to do an 8-team playoff at the end, similar to what we do with the WRL. So hopefully that explains everything. So let's talk about next week's broadcast. Going to change things up a little bit. Next Thursday is Thanksgiving. I am not going to do a broadcast. I hope you all are enjoying family, football, and food next Thursday. So what we're going to do is we're going to do this broadcast on Wednesday night, back to when we used to do it on the 26th of November. That is on Wednesday, and we're going to do it back on our old time as well at 8:30 p.m. East Coast time, and I might even have a guest host with me next week, so that should be exciting. That is it. I don't know if I missed anybody's chats that are out there. I did not. I appreciate everybody that stopped in tonight. Let's get this closing out there. I want to thank all of our sponsors. We have Sport Management Solutions, our title sponsor, and then, of course, the Recast, the official music of FSA. If you liked tonight's broadcast, make sure you go out, like, subscribe, share, follow us on all of our social medias. Enjoy your night of Thursday night football, and remember, we are fanatically real. You all have a great evening.